Hi, everybody. My name is Elisa Teague. I am senior producer of role-playing games here at Renegade Game Studios, and I am sitting here with Matt Holland, and we are going to make a Power Rangers character for the Power Rangers role-playing game today. Hey, Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm looking forward to this.
Me too. So we are making a series of these videos so people can see different types of character builds. And today we are going to be making you a character that you can play with at level 1. So the first thing that I want to do is talk to you a little bit about how the characters are built, how character creation happens in Essence 20 in general, but also specifically for the Power Rangers role-playing game. So there are 2 main pillars of character creation, and they're divided into different things. So we're going to start first with your character is built with 3 different options, which are origins, roles, and influences. And I always like to say that this works kind of like the old fashion plate system from when I was a kid. You would pick a head and you would pick a body, you would pick legs, and you'd flip them through and line them up, put a piece of paper over it, and use your crayon to color over it, and it makes a unique character. And that's kind of what the origins, the roles, and the influence does in Essence 20. So today we are going to pick an origin for you, a role, and 1 or more influences, and we'll get into that when we start. The second thing that makes up your character are your essence scores. And essences in the Essence 20 system are your strength, your speed, your smarts, and your social. And those are they all start with S. It's easy to remember. And those are
Essence 20.
Essences. It's a little it's a little hard to say, but it goes together really well. So yeah, and those scores will be reflected in all of your defenses in those categories. So depending on what those scores are, that's going to add, like, your strength leads to your toughness, which is how hard are you to hit, and things like that. And they also determine what kind of skills or how many skills you can have in each of those categories. So I want you to sort of keep that in mind. I know that you've never built a character before, but I want you to sort of keep those concepts in mind as we go through the process of creating a character.
Awesome.
So ready?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. You're going to need your character sheet and a pencil, or if you're using the form fillable PDF that you can find online, you can do that too. Makes it really easy. Either way, you're going to need those 2 things. You do not need dice for character creation in Essence 20, but you will need your imagination. And of course, the core rulebook and character creation steps you can find on page 14 of the core rulebook. And we're going to go through them together step by step and show how simple this is. So go ahead.
I said awesome. Let's do it.
Oh, okay. Step 1 is your character concept. So this comes right out of you, not out of the rules. So what have you thought about what you want to make? What kind of character do you want to be?
I love the idea of being kind of a gunslinger, and maybe I don't know that works with like the high school football captain or the lab geek archetype, because where do they learn those skills? So I was thinking maybe I'm not human at all, and I'm here from another planet and kind of incognito, but I've got some skills that I picked up in my past.
That is really cool. I mean, I want to note that you don't have, even if you're here from Earth, whether you're from Angel Grove or another city, it really doesn't matter. You don't have to be a high school student, that's for sure. You can be from anywhere. You could learn those types of skills, whether you served in the military or who knows where you would also pick up those skills from family members. But I think the idea of building a non-Earthling character is really cool, and I am excited to do that today. So you are not from Earth. You want to be a gunslinger.
Yes.
And what else? What kind of like personality do you feel like you have?
Kind of cocky, some sarcasm, you know, that like a good guy, but kind of scoundrelly.
So yes, we can get those types of vibes. That's actually, I'm really glad that that's the type of character you want, because I'd really like to show that you can build anything with this system, absolutely anything out of your imagination. So great, we have an awesome concept. And so we're going to move on to step 2. Now, if you had a name for this character already, which I always like to name my characters after I build them in any game system that I do
too.
But when you do come up with that name, you'll see at the top of the character sheet, there is a place to put your character's name, your pronouns, and some basic details description of what they look like, what their suit might look like. And again, I like my character creation choices to inform that. And I usually do it at the end. But if you have an idea of it, that's where you would put those things. And then we go to step 2, which is choosing that origin. Now, remember, there are 3 different sections that you choose from to build out a complete character: origin, role, and influence. So first, we're going to choose your origin. So if you turn to page 20 in the core rulebook, you will get to the character origins section. Now, your origin is, what type of a person were you before you were called to the power, right? Okay. So in Power Rangers, we do build off of the whole teenagers with attitude concept for origins. That doesn't mean you have to be a teenager, but that's where that came from, right? And so your origins that you have to select from as of now, and we are going to be, I mean, hint, hint, we are going to be offering new character selections in future supplements so that you can choose from even more. But right now, our choices are athletic, brainy, comedic, curious, cynical. That sounds a little bit like it might fit. Kind, oddball, popular, rebellious, or tragic. From what you were saying, I'm thinking cynical or rebellious. Now,
so I had liked comedic or rebellious or possibly oddball, but then cynical. I think that works perfectly for this person who's like seen a lot. You know, they've been around the block. They know what is out there in the galaxy, and it's kind of colored their past. So I'm a big fan of cynical.
I like it for a couple reasons. I like it because it seems to go with the character's concept pretty well. Also, for anybody who's, you know, a little bit of a metagamer out there, you already said that you want to be a gunslinger, and gunslingers require targeting for their skill, and cynical lets you upgrade your speed. So
that helped too.
Yeah, so that's for 2 reasons. I think cynical is a really good choice. So let's go with that one. And what you're going to do is on your character sheet at the top, right under your name, you're going to see where it says origin, and you're going to write cynical there, right?
Done.
And I'm going to build this along with you, just so I have a copy right in front of me. So I've written cynical there. So when we turn to page 24, that's where cynical is. It tells you a little description about, you know, being cynical. And then it also tells you what your starting health is. Now, as a cynical origin, you begin your character with 2 starting health. Now, this is why I always say to do your character sheets with a pencil or use the form fillable, or you can, you know, scratch it out or take notes on a separate piece of paper and then fill it in the end. This may change depending on other choices you make. But for right now, we want to put a 2 in the health box, which is slightly left of center on the character sheet, right in the middle. You'll see a box that says health, and you want to write 2 there because you're starting off with 2. Now, health in the game is how many times can you be hit before you are defeated? Okay. So for level 1, 2's not that bad. Some
certainly better than 1.
Start at 1. Yeah, some start at 1. And so that's the first thing that you do. Then you are going to get your essence score increases for this origin. And so you have a choice between speed or social, and you get to raise your essence score by 1 in either one of those. We already talked about speed is kind of important if you want to be a gunslinger. It doesn't mean you have to do that. And this is where I put in my little asterisk that I'll be saying in all of these videos. You will get 12 points to spend across your essence scores at the end. Some people like to spend that at first, and then they say, okay, now I get +1. I don't want anybody out there to be confused saying, oh, I have +1, but I have nothing right now. The reason why we put it in this order is I know that I like to see what my character build is going to give me first, and then fill in those extra points at the end, because then I can balance it out a little bit more and see what I have already. So you can skip ahead to where you do get those 12 points and do a basic spread. We usually like to recommend like spreading those 12 points into 4, 3, 3, and 2 for a varied but semi-balanced character. But you can do that now, but I just want to let everybody know these aren't the only things you're going to get. You will get some more later, and we will get to that.
So if I want to, for now, earmark that point for speed, I can just put that into speed. And,
yes, so we
just
just put a 1 right there in
that.
speed.
Perfect.
So let's say we're putting that in speed, right?
Yep.
Okay, so put a little 1 in the speed box, right? There's a little black box that says speed. Yep. And there's a little empty box next to it. And that's where we're going to put our 1. All of the calculations underneath it, we're going to do at the end.
Okay.
And so now you have this essence score upgrade. You know that you have a speed of 1. But like I said at the beginning, every time you have an essence score point, you get to spend that as a skill. And we're going to spend that right now. For Origins, it's going to give you a list of what you can choose from. So right under your essence score increase options in the book, it says bonus skill levels. And so they list you your speed-based ones and your social-based ones. So you'll see under speed-based, it says acrobatics or initiative. You get to choose one of those. Do you want this point to be spent as an acrobatic skill or an initiative skill?
And because I chose speed, I'm choosing one of those. Acrobatics, I think initiative, because that kind of works with like almost like a quick draw, I'm assuming, correct?
Initiative. So the way initiative works is when combat happens or any situation happens where we have to move from free form role playing into a turn-based thing, whoever has the highest initiative is going to get the opportunity to go first. So initiative is great. It's not so much that you're competing for going first against your fellow players, but the threats in the game will also have initiative. Yeah. So you want to make sure that you're going before they go. So having initiative is pretty great. So is that where you want to put it?
Yes. So where do I mark that down?
So in the speed column, you'll see there are skills listed, and those are all the speed skills. You'll see acrobatics, you'll see driving, finesse, infiltration, initiative, and targeting. Now you'll fill out now the little bubble that says D2.
So that's my D2 specialization in initiative, which means that I'm already a little bit ahead on that from where I'll normally be.
Cool. So having the D2 in initiative now means when it's time to roll for initiative, everybody always gets to roll for everything. But if you're unskilled, you have none of those little bubbles filled out, you're always rolling with a snag, which means you're rolling 2 D20s and taking the lowest value because you're not skilled. With a D2, you actually get almost like a double upgrade. You get to roll your D20 and add your D2 to it. So that gives you a little bit of a bump. If you put another skill rank in initiative, you would move to that D4. Okay. And now you filled out your little bubble, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that's perfect. So that bubble, you have 1 bubble filled out, matches your 1 speed. And as you're building your character, this is a great way to always check that you've done everything right. You haven't lost your place. You have 1 speed, 1 bubble under speed. You know you've taken your skill for that point.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Perfect. Okay, so your origin is going to give you a couple more things. It's going to determine what your basic ground movement is, right? And your basic ground movement is 30 feet. So you can fill that in right above your health to the right. You'll see a little movement box.
Got it.
And you can write a 30 right there. So you just know how many feet you move. If you're playing Theater of the Mind, your GM will tell you, yes, this thing is about, 20 feet away from you, and then you'll know you can get there. If you're playing on the table with a map, you'll know that on most maps that are 1-inch grids, those are 5 feet spaces. You can move about 6 spaces. You can move 6 spaces for that 30 feet. And then you're also going to get languages that you can speak. Now, every Power Ranger will be able to speak their native language fluently, automatically. Your native language is going to be what?
Not English. Something so, out of this world.
Out of this world. So what kind of alien do you want to be?
So having not as encyclopedic knowledge of Power Rangers as I think many people watching this, the alien that stood out to me was Dane, who was I saw him in one of the new Heroes of the Grid expansions. And I think you said he's from Sirius?
He's Syrian, yes. Syrian. So you want to be a Syrian
Ranger. So I think that's my native language.
So your native language would be Syrian. So up at the top right, you want to write Syrian up there. And that's your automatic language that you know. And then with Cynical, it says you are fluent in your native language and 1 additional language for each of 3 points of smarts you possess.
So I better at least have 3 points of smarts, or I'm going to not be able to speak to any of the humans.
Well, right now, you have 0 points of smarts. So that's something that you want to think about.
Keep in mind.
Maybe you just arrived to Earth. We'll see. After we're done building your character, you may end up with 3 points of smarts. Remember, you're going to have your 12 points, essence points, to spend across all of these at the end. So maybe you want to know English or whatever other language, depending on what country you live in on Earth. And so you can choose that at the end, but keep it in mind in case you decide to just put 2 points there. It might mean that you just don't speak what your fellow Rangers speak, or maybe they speak Syrian, depending on how you build this with your party. That would make for some fun role playing.
I could have somebody who does speak Syrian and has to translate.
Right now, we know that when you get up to 3 smarts, you can take another language. And so you do get also an origin benefit. Every origin gives you one. Yours is, what now? So I'm going to read it really quickly because it's fun. You are so steeled against being shocked or surprised that negative emotional responses are not something you really give into easily. Any attack or effect that targets you emotionally automatically suffers a snag, and you have edge when trying to roll to overcome emotional distress. That's pretty cool. So that is something that I always like to write in. I always keep a journal or notes of all of my game sessions when I'm playing. And I always like to write this out so I don't always have to look in the book, but we know it's there. You can also put it on page 2 of your character sheet. There's a notes section. You can write it there. You can write it there are a couple different places, wherever you think is easiest for you to know that you want to say that emotional targets to you will suffer a snag, and you get an edge when you're rolling a skill test to overcome them. And so what that means is a snag is you roll 2 d20s and take the lowest. So if somebody's attacking you with something emotional, they're rolling that snag, right?
Okay.
And an edge is the opposite. You get to roll 2 d20 and take the higher amount.
Okay.
So that's a pretty cool benefit. And that's it. That's origin.
My origin, it looks like.
That's done, right? So then we're going to move on to your role. Now, roles in the Power Rangers role-playing game are tied to the Ranger spectrum. And so this is going to determine what color Ranger you are. Each role gives you different types of benefits. I know that it will say you get your different essence adjustments, kind of like what we just did for Origins. We got to choose between speed and social. These will give you different types of benefits in the essence categories, depending on what color Ranger you choose. Now, remember, again, you are going to get 12 extra essence points.
Sure.
So if there's something specific that a role gives you and it doesn't quite match up with the essence adjustment that it gives you, you can always counterbalance that with those free points you get to spend anywhere you want. So if you really want to be, you know, a red ranger because of certain benefits that it gives, but you don't necessarily want to take the boost of strength, you really wanted to have a boost of smarts instead, you can always pump those free points into smarts and do it that way. So it's a very flexible system. But for you, you did say you wanted to be a gunslinger. Yeah. We do know that that is speed based. So the roles
it seems like pink and yellow both give +2 speed.
They sure do. And so the pink gives the extra to social. The yellow gives 1 to smarts. And we already know you want to kind of bump up your smarts if you want that other language.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So actually, I don't know. What do you think?
I like yellow for both the speed and smarts buff. And I also, just looking at the description, you know, eagle-eyed sharpshooter, always wear their surroundings for pink. But yellow is the fast and nimble, good at exploiting enemies' weaknesses. And I think I like that sort of style better.
That sounds like it fits really well. So under role, right at the top of your character sheet, you're going to want to write yellow ranger.
Okay.
Now, just because you're picking a yellow ranger, this does not necessarily determine exactly what your suit looks like. You can absolutely have a yellow suit, and it can be decorated however you want. I think I said in one of the other videos that you could have a plaid suit if you want to. You could have it look like anything you want. You are building your character. This is your own unique thing for your own unique team that you're playing with your friends. But that is your energy color.
So the energy color, if I wanted to have a green suit or something, but be a yellow ranger archetype, that's totally fine, right? That's all just That's all just within your group, and make it look how you want it to look.
Absolutely. The only thing that stays yellow is if there's a specific weapon or something you pick up later that is tied to your energy color, it's going to be tied to yellow energy and not green energy. Sure. That's it. But aesthetically, you can be whatever you want to be. So right now you are a Syrian yellow ranger. And so, okay, so now we know that that's going to give you +2 to speed and +1 to smarts. So now your speed is becoming a 3, right?
Yes.
So instead of 1, it's going to say
and
3.
Smarts is now 1.
Smarts is 1. And so let's flip to the Yellow Ranger section, which is on page 54. And you're going to see a cool description of what a Yellow Ranger is, the soul of the team, some basics about, you know, the basic yellow archetype, right? And then you're going to see a chart, a table, and it has all of your levels there. Right now, we are building a level 1 character. So you'll see that it will say first level. It lists your role perks right there in the chart, and the descriptions of those are below in the text. It says your personal power capacity is 2, starting at level 1. So we're going to want to write that on your character sheet as well. And so
personal power
that
capacity
is personal power. It's right next to movement, to the left of movement. So put a 2 right there. And we already put in your speed increase and your smarts increase. And so you know,
do I do anything with follow-up die there? Do I need to put that down anywhere? Or is
you can put that down in your notes if you want to, but you can always refer to this chart.
Okay.
And then so now under spectrum role features, which is on page 55, right underneath the chart, you can see that your personal power regeneration is 3 per day. Right now, you only have 2 personal power, but eventually that will go up as you level up. And what that means is when you spend those power points to activate your powers, they are depleted until you sleep. Once you have slept, you regenerate 3 each time. A day is between sleeping. Right.
And that appears to match the table, like the +1 per every 3 levels is reflected in that table above, looks like. Cool.
And so then you have your training. So Yellow Rangers are trained in light armor. Okay, and light armor, and this is in the equipment section. Light, actually, it tells you on the next page also under its morphin time, but light armor is going to give you a +1 to toughness. So under your strength, you will see where that calculation is. It says 10 plus blank,
Yep.
plus blank, plus
1
armor.
for armor.
Put a 1 right there. That's for later. But that's the armor that you get to start with. But that's, you can always train up and get higher armor, but that's what you're getting to start with. And then you are going to get your starting skill rank choices, right? So we know you got 2 in speed, +1 in acrobatics or initiative. And +1 in finesse. That's your 2 speed points, right? So do you want to take one of your speed points in acrobatics or initiative?
So acrobatics, that's, you know, you're jumping, flipping, climbing type stuff.
I mean, you're doing some parkour. Yeah.
Well, I think I've already got 1 in initiative, so I want to do acrobatics this time.
Perfect. That gets you at least skilled. So you're not rolling out a snag, right?
And then I get finesse, just, it's not a choice, I just get finesse, correct?
You just get finesse.
And then alertness
So
for my
that's your
1 point
key.
to smarts.
Right. So, but let's just double check speed really quickly. You now have 3 speed essence points and you have 3 bubbles filled in, right?
Correct.
Perfect. Okay. So now we're going to do smarts. So for smarts, you get alertness automatically. That's what it says under your training. So you're trained in alertness, and that takes up that smarts. So you want to fill in that bubble. And alertness is your perception, how well you hear things, how well you notice things. Your GM may say, oh, you walk into a building, you say, okay, well, what does it look like? You might say, well, roll an alertness skill test. And depending on what you roll, that's the level of detail that you might get, right?
Sure.
Or whether or not you notice if somebody else is, you know, stealthing up to you. So that's all of your training. And now you get your equipment, and you can list your equipment on the second page of your character sheet. You are automatically going to get a risk communicator, your power morpher, your blade blaster. And under blade blaster, you can put that in your weapons list. And what I like to do is I like to list blade blaster twice because it actually acts as 2 different weapons. You can put that, if it's something that you're going to use all the time, you can put it on the front page of your character sheet under attack. If it's an attack you use all the time, you can list it twice there. There's lots of room. But your blade blaster is going to give you the ability to use it as a blade or use it as a blaster. So for you, you know, as you know, somebody who's probably going to use targeting more than anything, you'll probably be using that ranged weapons effect with the blade blaster more, but you never know if somebody comes up right next to you and you need to quickly use it. You might want to have that stat right there on the front as well. But you can put it in either place, whatever is more comfortable for you, so you know where the information is. So for right now, we can fill out what each of those weapons do later, because the amount of damage, I'm sorry, not the amount of damage, the type of attack that you're going to make with it and how much power is behind it is going to matter when you make the rest of your character build. So we don't want to fill out the weapon stats. So all weapons do the same amount of damage. It's just how good are you at using it? That's going to make the difference. So right now, just write blade blaster. And then you get to pick 2 light power weapons. Now, light weapons are smaller weapons, like lighter weapons that are like sidearms and things like that. And so you can, which is perfect for you.
Can you dual wield them?
I'm sorry?
Can I dual wield 2 light power weapons?
I think you can. It depends on the weapon that you choose. So let's just take a look at the weapons chart. I am finding it. You have your weapon choice for this on page 108. And so you can dual, so you can dual wield these, but you're not going to be able to take more than 1 attack unless you have your speed high enough. Now, we're going to get to that part in a second. So your speed definitely dictates all of these skills that are under speed, like your initiative and your targeting, your finesse and all of that. But your speed also dictates how many actions you can make in your turn. So whether you can move, just move or shoot, for example, or if you can move and shoot. And then beyond that, how many free actions you can take. So if you pump up your speed, which I think you're going to be able to do, you will likely be able to use more than one. So if you wanted to take, for example, we have the Zeo laser pistols. That's a really cool choice. Those are light weapons. They're sidearms, so they're light.
Okay, so anything sidearm is a light weapon?
Okay. And so the cool thing about these pistols also is their normal effect is that they do 1 energy damage, but they have an alternate effect where instead you can use your particular ranger energy from your spectrum and do that type of damage instead. And for yellow, it is a stun 3, which is really cool. So if you want to incapacitate somebody and then interrogate them later or whatever it is, that's a really cool alternate effect.
Oh, I see here under the alternate effects.
That goes along with yellow really well. Yeah, under alternate effects. So each ranger role gives a different type of alternate effect that it can do. But being able to stun a threat is pretty cool. So
yeah, I think that looks good to me. So like the auto blaster, that is not a sidearm. That is not considered light, correct? Then
no, it's not.
Like the next one down.
Yeah, the auto blaster is not considered light.
Perfect.
The auto blaster is a combined weapon. So it's actually something that you make when you are combining your weapons with your fellow rangers. So you can make an auto blaster using the combined weapons rules that are in the equipment section. And it teaches you how to do that. But that's not something that you just carry by yourself.
Cool. Well, the Zeo laser pistol idea works for me, and I would like to have 2 in holsters to.
Yeah, that sounds
so
great.
do I just need to put it one time?
This already in your outfit. So now under weapons, you can write it there. This is going to be one of your main attacks, so you could also put it on the front of your character sheet. I assume you're going to be using this a lot or both, just so so the rules are handy. But right now, you just want to write Zeo laser pistols. I mean, you don't even have to write the Zeo part. That's where the inspiration came from, is from those pistols. But these can be flavored however you want.
These are actually, they're from Sirius. Like I brought them from home. So
yeah. So they look however you want them to look. This is your character. Don't forget, this is just how they're being built by using the properties that exist as an influence.
Sure.
And so, and in the core rule book, we've given examples of weapons that are from the first few seasons of the show. In future supplements, we're going to be giving examples of a lot of other things that you can just build right off of and use them as general templates. Okay, so that's there. You can fill out things like your range for them. So the range is 40/75 feet. That means that if you shoot something that's 40 feet away, super easy, you can hit it as long as you roll well enough. And if you're shooting something up to 75 feet away, you would roll it at a snag. After 75 feet, you can't hit. It doesn't go that far, right?
Sure.
And so, and we know that the effects are always going to be energy 1, or as an alternate effect, stun 3. The only thing you can't fill out quite yet is what your actual attack is, because that's going to depend on what your targeting is going to end up being, which we'll know at the end.
Okay.
So that's that. That's your basic equipment that you start with.
And I put the blade blaster in there too. So the blade blaster, correct me if I'm wrong, it's energy 1 or sharp 1, depending on how I'm using it.
So if you're targeting with it, it says in like below parentheses blaster, you do the energy damage. If you are being stabby with it, it does sharp damage.
Okay.
And so, and if it's a blade, it's your reach, so it's 5 feet, within 5 feet of you. The blaster part, the targeting is 40 feet/75. It's the same as your other pistol. And so, yeah, so that's all of your weapons. And then the rest of the section for your role choice goes into detail about what you can do in your role and how, as your ranger progresses through levels, what extra stuff they're going to get. There's a little section that I advise everybody to read called It's Morphin' Time. It basically tells you what your difference is when you're morphed, right? So we already wrote down that you have light armor when you're morphed. So you're going to get that +1. We put that down on your character sheet. Mm-hmm. You're also going to get all of your jump distances tripled, because you're not a Power Ranger unless you can jump at
incredibly far,
very wild amounts of heights and distances. And as a free action, you can summon your weapon, your pistol, to your hand. It's automatically there. No pockets needed, but if you want that holster for fashion, go for it. And when you are reduced to 0 health, you can, instead of being defeated, you can choose to demorph back into your Syrian form and be at 1 health. But then you can't go through It's Morphin' Time again until the rules allow you to. And so you might have a perk that allows you to go back into it, but that depends on what you take later. And so the rest will give you information about what you can do later on as a character. But since we're just doing level 1 character creation right now, we will skip ahead and go to our next step. Did you have a question? Sorry.
No, I just think like that you can see the spoilers for, I guess, for how it you advance through the levels. I mean,
you could say it's spoilers, but it's almost like if you're playing a video game and you can like research the talent tree ahead of time, right? It's sure. The same thing. So it's like, okay, where can I go? What can I do with this? And a lot of people like to read ahead before they choose what role they're going to take, just to see what they'll be able to grow into. And that's perfectly valid. I mean, that's all part of it. If you are playing for role play, like if you're more of the role playing side and you care about their character and their interactions and all of that more than the mechanics, then you can choose just what you like. But a lot of people do care very much about all of the nitty-gritty mechanics, and they'll read through everything and choose depending on what they can eventually be, right? So either is fine. So now we've done step 3, choosing a role, and we are going to now go to step 4, that's back on page 15, which is choosing influences. Now, your influence is what have you been through in your whole life? It could be as a child or even now, that affect you, that influence who you are, right? And so influences begin on page, sorry, I'm not there yet. It's on page 84. And so your influences are going to give you some mostly role-playing hints and tips. This is really something that like allows you to create who your character is in play. There aren't a lot of mechanics here, but there are a few. It will give you a little bit of a benefit. And if you take more than one, which is an option, you will get a hang up. So because you can't just stack benefits over and over again, because that's not really fair or fun, you get hang-ups. Now, I actually love hang-ups because I think that makes a more interesting character. Like the little quirks, the little things that happen to you, even when you're playing a game and you roll on the die and it's a number you don't want to see and something terrible happens. To me, that's like the most fun part of playing. And it happens to me a lot, actually. But it's the most fun part of playing because then you get to act out how you overcome whatever it is that happened to you. So if you decide to take more than one influence and you get a hang up, that's super cool. But you don't have to. So let's go through what the influences are. And I also want to point out, these influences are suggestions for the most part. You can sit and work with your game master and customize an influence. There's a little bit about that on page 85 at the bottom. You can sit and work out something. If you feel like something doesn't quite fit, and there's something really specific you want to have had happen, you can always sit down and say, okay, well, what would be a reasonable perk that I would get for this? And what would be a reasonable hang up that would come with it, right? So, but today we're going to choose out of the book. And our influences are artisans. Like, are you an artist of some sort, a painter or a singer or a baker? Are you a caretaker? Maybe there's somebody that you are in charge of their care, whether it's somebody who is a younger person in your family, or you're a parent, or maybe you take care of an older person, or you do some sort of community service where you take care of the elderly. So that's caretaker. Community helpers. So whether you're part of a volunteer program, or you are a firefighter or a police officer or somebody in the community. Small town roots, which means you come from a remote area, smaller town, and everything that comes with that. Martial artist, so you are trained in all different types of, well, maybe not all, you get to be trained in a particular type of hand-to-hand combat. A nomad, somebody who's traveled from place to place all their life. Maybe you are an army brat or a radio station kid, or your parents were traveling salespeople, or whatever it is that made you have to move a lot. And then not from around here sounds pretty good for you, because
That's
you are not from
eyeing.
around here. So that could mean from a different country, from a different planet, could be anything you want. And then we also have student and survivor, which means you've overcome something that is, hard in your life and you have survived it. That could be anything you want. And the last one is teacher. So you are either a traditional teacher, or you take it upon yourself to be a mentor to others and teach them things. So
I am a big fan of Not From Around Here. I think it works perfectly for this concept, and it'll be kind of fun for role playing. So that goes in influences. Perfect.
So you want to write Not From Around Here, and then you get a perk for this. So your perk for Not From Around Here is you gain an edge on skill tests outside of combat, so not while you're fighting.
So this goes under my perks area.
Right. Now you want to write that on page 2. You can write that under perks, right? Or however you want to note it. There isn't a ton of space to write out the whole paragraph. You can always refer to the book or the PDF to see the full description. Again, I am very thorough, and I always write this out on a separate set of notes or in the notebook for my games, just so I have everything that's just pertaining to me really, really handy. And so, so you gain an edge on skill tests outside of combat where your distinct upbringing or unusual background comes into play. Oh, and one additional language.
I was going to say, so that solves my my communication potentially, although I could use it to know like another alien language or something potentially. Cool.
That's up to you, but you might want to make a note. If you don't want to choose that language right now, just make a note so you don't forget that you get that extra language. And then just under your perks, you want to write edge on skill tests related to Syrian, right? That's how I would write it, because that means that any type of thing that comes up that has to do with your upbringing, or maybe there's something in your background and you can talk to your game master about that. Maybe there's something specific about your upbringing that it doesn't have to do with, your planet that really affected you, and you would be able to roll that edge. And again, edge is you roll 2 d20s, you take the highest of those. And then you don't get a hang up because this is your first one, so you can ignore the hang up. But there are suggested characteristics in the form of background bonds. And so
I have one quick question. The hang up, I know I don't need the hang up, but I know you get a hang up, you take a second influence. That hang up is really cool though to me. So could I take a second influence and then have the hang up come from this one?
Yeah, you can. Okay. It doesn't make a difference. So you just
that's what I thought. I just wanted to check.
It's whichever one. You just say you take the first one and then this is your second one. That's fine.
Okay.
So you can put a pin in that one if you want to take another influence.
Yes.
Right. And then, but you also want to take a look at this chart for background bonds. Now, This is a role-playing aid. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. You can roll a D12 because there are 12 entries here if you want, and take a random one. You can look through the list and say, this one really stands out to me for my character and I want to use this, or you can make up your own. But what background pawns do is it gives you a reason for certain types of behaviors while you're role playing in games. So for example, if you were going to, oh, that's funny. I just looked at number 4 and it's new foods or earthly devices fascinate me, but it's just a little quirk or a little thing that you're tied to, that while you're role playing, you can always go back to that and be like, oh yeah, I love new foods. And so that just helps with getting into character when you're, acting things out around the table. And so that's up to you. You can decide on that later. You can write that down on background bonds. You can make up your own. It's just something that helps you role play. And so that's it for influences, unless you want to take a second one, which I think you might want to.
I do. And I think Nomad is kind of cool too, because, I ended up on Earth, but it wasn't the only place that I've been. And I think this character is newer to Earth. So I think Nomad's kind of fun.
Okay, so that sounds great. So you want to write Nomad down. Also, you want to write down this influence perk. You have a strong ability to read people and their motivations. And due to how fast you've needed to make new friendships, you're a good judge of character, right? You're moving around from place to place. You really need to be able to read a book fast, right? And so you gain an edge on social tests when attempting to gain insight into someone's motives or see if they're lying to you. So whenever you roll a social skill test that is either a contested skill test, like against somebody's deception, like they're lying, or if you're trying to figure out what they are not telling you, even if they're not directly lying, or if they're trustworthy, you get to roll with an edge. Again, 2d20s, you take the highest. Additionally, you have an edge on knowledge tests about cities you've lived in. Now, this can apply to you in a way of planets you've lived on. Sure. So, and we have, on this table, places like a random places you might have lived. These are examples, and this is proof of that. These are just examples of American cities. You could have been a nomad from all around the world. You could have been a nomad from different planets. You can decide wherever those places are and write that down just for role-playing reasons. But we're not going to take this hang up. You said you want to take the other hang up.
Yes.
So make sure to flip back to not from around here. And then on your character sheet under hang-ups, you want to write that you suffer a snag on all social-based skill tests about naturally understanding human beings. So anytime the game master says, roll a, something that has to do with, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, something that you would have to do. Let's say roll a streetwise for, getting into this club, right?
Oh God.
And you have no idea because you've never done that before. You might bumble around trying to slip a 20 into the bouncer's hand or something like that.
Would that also sort of play? So like I have the perk that helps me determine if somebody's lying, but if it's a human, is that balanced out by the fact, so I have an edge, I think. Do I have an edge when dealing with somebody lying?
You have an edge, yeah. You have an edge on seeing if they're lying to you, but this isn't necessarily about understanding things that have to do with being human, right?
Sure, I was just wondering if those cancel out in a situation, if they're both relevant, if they would cancel out the edge and the snag, how that worked.
He might. I would say that that's, in play, depending on the situation, that is the game master's job to decide on whether or not that would cancel out. Depending on the situation, they might. Or they may see that as a very different type of concept, depending on what you're trying to do. But I would definitely argue for it. I'm all about using your abilities and your skills to do whatever you want to do. And the great thing about the Essence 20 system is that it's really flexible in that way. So if you are really good at something, you have high skill ranks in a certain skill, and your game master is asking you to make a skill test in a slightly different skill, but your skill really can apply, I always say, bring it up. Say, oh no, well, I know you're saying that I need to like break through this thing, but I'm great and I don't have very much brawn, but I'm great at acrobatics. Can't I just climb over it? And they might say, yeah, you totally can do that. So you always want to ask. And okay, and guess what? That's it for influences, easy peasy. And so now we want to assign those essence points. We're finally here, right? So we have right now 3 speed, 1 smarts, but now you have 12 to assign across the board. Again, we recommend for a more balanced character doing a spread of 4, 3, 3, and 2 and putting those in the different categories wherever you want. And then of course your additional stuff from your character build gets added to that. But you can really do it however you want to. If you want to be really, really, really smart or really, really, really fast and have no strength at all, you can do it. I don't recommend it, but you can do it.
Yeah, is there a break point? Is there like a point where I guess is 2 sort of you're not very good at this, but you know 2 strength means you're not going to be like struggle to open a car door, but you're not going to be knocking the socks off somebody when you punch them?
Your strength is important for these reasons. Your strength is going to add into what your toughness is. So whatever your strength score is, you add 10 to it, and that's how easy you are to hit. So let's say you have a 2 in strength. Unmorphed, you have a 12. So if a threat is going to try to hit you, the game master is going to roll that same type of combination. They're going to roll their d20 plus whatever might the threat has. And if that's over a 12, you're going to get hit and you will lose a health. So the higher that is, the better for not getting hit. Okay. Right? And of course, your armor, you have a +1, so it's really a 13 if you're morphed. But you want to take that in consideration. And then also the second thing that strength does is, of course, gives you the skills so that you can hit better yourself. Right now you have a 0, which means that unmorphed, you're a 10 toughness, which is not great. I do recommend a 2 in at least across the board, just in general. That goes for speed as well. We'll get to the reasons why. I mean, for you, you know you're going to have speed, but there are a lot of reasons why you want to have speed. For smarts and social, for role-playing reasons, it's okay to be a little bit lower, but there are a lot of things that you need to think about. There are a lot of creative solutions and obstacles that you need to have your smarts and your social about if you want to talk your way out of a situation or you want to do some research. Those are important. So I don't know. It's up to you. This is your character.
And I see, so like toughness is getting hit. Evasion, so is toughness against melee attacks, evasion against ranged attacks?
It is. And in a lot of cases, you can choose. So if the game master says, okay, this threat is shooting an energy beam at you. Most cases you can say, I'm going to tough it out if you're really a strength-based character and try to absorb the hit, and hopefully it doesn't hit you or affect you. Or you can say, I'm going to dodge with my evasion and get out of the way, and hopefully you're fast enough to do that depending on what their role is. So there's certain types of attacks though that are declared on what they hit, and that is always in the attack stat block. It'll say in parentheses what it does. And so if it says toughness, it means you have to defend with toughness. If it says evasion, you have to defend with evasion. There's certain powers that threats will have that will affect your cleverness or willpower also. And you have to defend with those. But if it doesn't say anything, you get to choose between toughness and evasion.
So I am thinking of putting, I'm just going to go with that spread. I think that's a nice, like, follow your rule of thumb. I'm thinking of putting the 2 in strength to kind of have that glass cannon feel. So, you know, he wants to dodge and just be super fast. If he gets caught, like, he's going to have a bad time. And that's kind of makes that a little bit more risky, but also kind of exciting, I think.
Okay, sounds good.
Then, so it was 2, 4, and 2 3s, you said?
You have a 4, a 4 and 2 3s left.
So I think a 3 in social.
Okay.
So he's not the most incredibly clever or social person, but not bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think a 4 in smarts, which would bring it up to a 5.
That's correct.
What we've got. And then that means a 3 in speed, which brings me to a 6.
That's right. That's perfect. So you have a 2, 6, 5, 3. That sounds great. Now we need to spend those. So what we're going to do is we are going to do our calculations and go down each column. So we're going to start with strength. Okay, so strength, you have a 2. Your toughness is always going to be 10 plus whatever your strength is. So right now it is a 12. So in that little toughness box, you put a 12. Right below that, you're going to be calculating what your morphed toughness is, right? So it's your 10 plus your essence score, which is 2, plus 13. Any perks that you get for strength, which right now you don't have, but you could add them later. Plus 1 for your armor. So your toughness morphed is a 13.
Okay.
Does that all make sense?
That makes sense. And that reflects what I've got.
Perfect. So now you have 2 strength essence points to invest in skill ranks. So the skills that are under strength are athletics. So that is, if you want to throw something or hit something that uses your athletic skills, that is what athletics is. So anything that is requiring maybe a climbing thing that you need strength to do it, that isn't like brawn or just hitting somebody, which is might, that would fall under athletics. Brawn, getting to that, is how tough you are, not in an armor sense, but how physically strong you are as far as pushing something or pulling something. And brawn also can encompass endurance for resisting certain things that could happen to you. So your GM may ask you to make a brawn skill test to, just through brute strength alone, get through something. And so that's brawn. Conditioning is one of the rare examples where there's no specializations. And we're going to talk about that in a second, specializations, because that's going to come into play pretty soon. Conditioning also is not tied to a die roll. If you put one of your skill ranks in conditioning, it boosts your health automatically.
Okay.
So conditioning is pretty good, especially if you're a glass cannon, because if you do get hit, at least you have more health. I like to think of health like hearts in like a video game, right? So you get hit and that heart goes away. Once you're down to 0, you are defeated. So the more hearts you have, the better. The more health you have, the better. So you might want to invest in there. And then intimidation is like how well you intimidate people using your pure physical form, right? This is not like a social intimidation. This is just using how big and strong you are. And then might is used for mostly melee combat, but it can be used for other things too, depending on what your game master wants. You'll see also underneath each one of these things, little blank lines with their own little bubbles. And those are for specializations. Now you can also invest your skill ranks in specializations.
So I'm going to bubble something for each essence point. It could be upgrading my die, or it could be a specialization.
It could be either one. Most people won't specialize until at least they have, a die in something, because it's not going to do anything for you. If specializations really don't come into play until you have a D4, you can put it in there if you want to, but I don't recommend it. But when we get to your speed where you have 6 to spend, that might be where that will come into play. Right now, for strength, I don't recommend specializing in anything, because you're not a strength-based character anyway. You wouldn't specialize.
So if let's say I put them both, because this guy's not particularly brawny or intimidating or mighty, so I'm thinking of just putting him into conditioning so I have some more health. I put both into a conditioning, is that +3 total, or is it +2 total? Is it just the highest you have?
It's +2, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to do that. That puts my health at 4 then?
It does. But just remember, if you have to hit somebody in like hand-to-hand combat, you are always rolling just that D20 at a snack. Yeah? All right. As long as you're going into this knowing that's what's going to happen. So yes, so now your health is a 4. It's pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to move on to speed, and we're going to do the exact same thing. It works the exact same way. So your evasion is going to be 10 plus the 6 that you have. So your evasion is a 16.
I got that.
So you can dodge out of the way pretty well at level 1. And then on that next line, you'll again put your little essence score 6 next to that 10. You don't have any perks that add to your evasion right now, but you could pick some up later. And you don't have any other bonuses. All of your perks that you have are not speed based. They're all edges and things like that, mostly in social, I think you picked up. So you don't have any of those right now. Again, there are general perks that you'll be able to pick up as you level, and that's where those will go. And so your total morphed evasion is a 16 still. But now you have 3 more points. We've already invested those first 3 in the ones you were required to do.
Yes.
You have 3 more points to spend in skill ranks in speed. So right now you don't have anything in targeting, and that's your main thing.
Yeah. So I think I would like to do 2 into targeting.
Perfect.
So that brings me up to a D4, and then what's finesse focus on?
Finesse, there's certain weapons that are finesse weapons, so that if you are using those, you can use finesse instead of might. There are also certain weapons that, including your fists, by the way, that you can use either. So if you want to put one in finesse because you don't have your might, and you say, hey, when I'm doing hand-to-hand combat, I actually use finesse because I use this type of martial art, that is, more dexterous based than brute force based, then you can use finesse for your hand-to-hand combat.
So I do have 1 rank in finesse from
oh yes, you do.
My roll, I think it was.
Yeah. So because you have that, then you wouldn't be rolling at a snag actually when you're doing hand-to-hand combat with no weapon.
I knew that.
But not with your blade, right? Not with your blade.
Sure.
But another thing you can do, and again, it might be a little early for this, depends on what you want to do. You can specialize under targeting in pistols.
Okay.
Right?
And what is the mechanical benefit of doing that?
So the it's really cool actually. So when you specialize in something, if you're making a skill test related to that specialization, instead of now rolling your D20 plus your D4 for shooting and taking that total, and that's the number you get to roll your D20, and then you roll the D4 and every die below it. So right now, a D2, right? And whichever one is higher, you add to your D20. Now, you might say, oh, well, it's just a D2. What's the difference? Well, you might roll a 1 on that D4 and a 2 on the D2, and then you get the higher number. That's number 1 reason. The number 2 reason is once you start climbing up that die ladder and getting more skill ranks, let's say you're rolling a D8 for your targeting and you're specialized in pistols and you're shooting with a pistol, you get to roll the D8, the D6, the D4, the D2. And the way that critical successes work in Essence 20 system is it's not based on that D20. It's not like some other games out there where if you roll a 20, it's a crit, right? If you're successful in your roll and you have any of your dice aside from the D2 showing the highest number on that particular die, that's a critical success. So you get so many chances to critically succeed. So specialization is really, really cool.
And I now see why you're saying that there's no point in taking specialization until I have at least the 2 ranks of dice. So I'm going to take the third one as a pistol specialization.
You're perfect. So you want to fill out the little bubble on that first line. You always want to remember to fill out the bubbles. It's really important.
And the
because we
bubbles
got to
will
count that
always
in.
match my score.
Right. And you can write pistols. Now, I don't want to take too long on this, but let's just say there's something you want to specialize, and it's not in the listed suggestions of specializations in the book. You can always, those are just suggestions and some common ones that we give as examples. If there is something specific you want to specialize in, you can always talk to your game master and say, hey, my character is really good at this, and this is why. And you can always specialize in that. Usually specializations are really specific, so there's really no downside for a game master to say no to a request like that. Sure. Because when are they going to come into play if it's outside of what we've already suggested? And the way that we see it when we were designing the system is there is no reason, if you've spent years and years and years learning how to do a thing, you should be able to have all of those chances to critically succeed. I think I said this in another, like one of my videos a while back, but my favorite example of this is being a doctor, right? You go to medical school, you spend all of this time, you know all about medicine, and so you are skilled in what you do. Mm-hmm. But let's say you go, you specialize in heart surgery, right? And you are a heart surgeon. Heart surgeons do heart surgery every single day. They succeed almost every single time. I mean, it's very rare that they're going to fumble, and it's sad when they do. But generally speaking, you go into surgery, you know that your patient's going to survive. You should critically succeed, right? It doesn't mean that.
So that makes sense. It makes sense.
I think you can always do surgery on something else because you're a doctor. You know how to. Then you don't roll the specialization because it's not heart surgery. You can do surgery on somebody's hand or whatever it is, and you'll be okay.
And that seems to be one of the things that tripped up people reading, like the specializations in the book. That says those are just some of the things you could specialize in. It's not just those.
Yep, so they're just sample specializations so that you have a guideline of the types of things that you can take. They're also good recommended ones that go along with being a Power Ranger in general. And that's why we listed those. But you can always pick whatever you want.
Awesome. Well, I have spent now, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all points of speed that I have.
Perfect.
So smarts.
So now we go to smarts.
My willpower is 15.
Correct.
My morphed ability is 15 as well.
Mm-hmm. At level 1, this is going to be typical.
And then I have 4 remaining points to spend. Mm-hmm. I think that technology is a great place to have at least one of those because I'm from another world. We have very advanced tech. Alertness, this is people not getting the drop on you and everything. I like that. So, and I already had a D2 in that. I'm going to add a second one to go to D4.
Perfect.
Culture, science, survival. What's a specialization I could do under like alertness or technology? Let's say I put them both at a D4.
A great one for alertness is perception. Because a lot of times they will say, because alertness is just general, awareness of what's going on. But if you really want to be able to like see things like specifically or investigation, so you want to really know how to do research on something, those are 2 really good specializations to take. You can take multiple specializations too. It eats up a skill rank. So like, do you want, and it's a balance. Everybody does it different ways.
Jack of all trades, master of none if you specialize in a bunch of different things versus going deep. So I'm going to do perception. So because sharpshooter, great eyesight, notices a lot of stuff. That makes sense. So I'm at a D4 in alertness with perception, and I'm at a D4 in technology, but no specialization.
Right. So I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4. You still have one more.
No, I should use them all.
I see you have a D2 and a D4 in alertness with a specialization in perception.
Yep.
So that's 3. And then D2 in technology.
I have D4 in technology.
Oh, D4 in technology.
Yeah, I took D4 in both of those.
Perfect. So we count up the bubbles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That matches your smarts. Smarts is done. And now we just have social, same calculation. You do have a lot of social perks, but they don't give you extra points essence stuff. It just gives you edges, which is great anyway, because you'll be rolling a lot. So right now you just do that same calculation, and later on as your character grows, that may change. But you do have 3 social points to invest in skill ranks. So those are animal handling, deception, performance, persuasion, and streetwise. So think about your character. And
what's like what is performance?
Do you need to sing a song or give a speech or make a very convincing argument? Persuasion can be used for that as well. So I would always say, if your game master says, oh yeah, roll performance for your convincing speech, you can say, well, can I do it under persuasion? And they will generally say yes, they should. And so again, these are really flexible and they're meant to be. So we really
definitely want to take one in streetwise.
One in streetwise, perfect.
And I think deception at least as well. So I could see deception kind of working for that.
Yeah, you're this like cynical,
sort of scoundrel-y type person. I'm just debating where to put the second one. It probably is gonna be one of those. I think we'll go D4 on deception.
Okay, so now I see 3 bubbles.
So you can be kind of tricky. 3 bubbles, yeah. 2 in deception, 1 in streetwise.
Okay, so that was step 6. We determined all of our skills. We increased our skill ranks where we wanted to. The only things that are left is, first of all, we're going to take our different might, finesse, and targeting. Those are the 3 that mostly apply to any type of weapons we have, and fill that in now. So we know that for your blade blaster as a blade, you are going to be unskilled. So you want to write under attack unskilled. That just means you roll 2 d20s, right? And then you have.
And then now if I use it, yeah, okay. So my blade blaster blade is unskilled. In shooting mode, what would I write for that?
Targeting. So that is your D4. And the blade blaster, I don't think, I'm going to have to double check because I don't remember if it's categorized as a pistol or not, but I don't think it is. One moment, let's make sure. I don't see it as that. So I'm going to say no. And
just D4.
Yeah, it's a D4, but your laser pistols, your Zeo laser pistols, you're going to want to write plus D4 and put a little asterisk there.
Yep.
The asterisk, and you'll see that in the fret stat blocks too in the book. The asterisk always means it's specialized, so you roll everything underneath it. It's a good way of just notating that is specialized skill. And so anytime you shoot with those pistols, I don't see why you would ever really shoot unless it's taken away. Your pistols are taken away from you. I don't know why you would choose to shoot with your blade blaster, but you never know. Maybe something happens to them in game and you'll end up going to your blade blaster as a secondary weapon. But that wouldn't then be used as your specialization. And then you might want to put
like fists, like hand to hand for.
Yeah, you can write it as a strike. You can write it in the weapons chart. It's called a strike, or you can write hand-to-hand combat, and that is just your finesse attack with no weapon, and that would be a D2. Because you have that, and then that does 1 stun, right? As a general effect, your normal effect, and if you want to use your alternate effect, you can write blunt 1. And with a little downshift arrow. We're going to go over what all of that means in another video, but it basically means that you would be downshifting your roll. So instead of that D2, you're rolling unskilled again. And that's in order to do actual damage, not just stun. Otherwise, when you hit somebody, you can just stun them. Okay. And that's it for those calculations. The only thing left is describing your character and selecting any other extra equipment. But we kind of did the equipment part when we did our rolls. I like to do it right there because it tells you what you can choose from and it's right there in front of you. But if you want to do a a more in-depth weapon selection and go through all of these calculations that we just did, you can do that at the end as well.
Okay.
So then you just describe your character. So we already know sort of the attitude that your character is going to have. What do you think? I mean, you can take your time with this one for sure. You don't have to do it
I've been
here.
thinking about it a little bit. He definitely rocks a really sweet duster, kind of like, you know, the coat, and that also helps have the kind of a gunslinger look. So
right. It also might help disguise. I mean, I don't know how many Earthlings are going to be just fine with watching Syrian walk down the street unmarked.
And also, you can flip the collar up and kind of pass amongst the people with less fear and shock.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. And then you can also think about what your suit's going to look like when you morph, right? What kind of features does it have? Is it yellow? Does it have some special insignias on it? That's all stuff that you, I mean, mechanically, it doesn't matter, but it really does add to your character. You'll see in a lot of, you know, we used a lot of art from different seasons of the show in the book to just show off all the different types of characters.
Yeah, I love that spread of each of the colors, like of all the different types of Rangers. And I've also really enjoyed seeing people who've been making their characters in the Facebook group, sometimes drawing their own character and stuff. That's really cool. A lot of talent showing up.
This is where you get to be really creative and make whatever you want, right? And so I look forward to seeing all of those start pouring in, because that's the fun part, right? Is seeing what everybody does and see how they sit down and play together. But yeah, and I mean, that's it for level 1.
That really wasn't hard at all. There's definitely, and this feels exactly like kind of what I was going for with the character. So it was nice to see that the system kind of let me get there, you know, within the confines, even just of the core book. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. We wanted to put in enough of a range of choices so you could build anything you want. That doesn't mean we're not going to be offering some really cool additional choices later. Sure. But you could, I've said time and time again, you can build anything with this book. Later on, you may be able to do that in different ways or with more specific choices, but you can, I want everybody to challenge me with this one.
The book's supposed to be a Lego set, like a set of Legos that are basic bricks that you can build anything. You may be able to buy a space shuttle later or a coffee shop later, but you can make your version of the space shuttle or coffee shop with these pieces.
I love that analogy. That's perfect. Yeah.
There you go.
Anyway, that's about it until we start leveling up, and we will be doing videos on that, where I think we're going to be, doing a bunch of cool stuff for Power Rangers month, but even beyond that for the future. I really want to put out as much content as possible to help everybody out. But in the meantime, please make sure to join our Facebook groups and the Discord. There's a lot of really valuable information that is being given out, not only by our own staff and the writers, but even by fellow players. And it's a place to discuss any questions that you have. We're there to help you out.
And we are also going to post these character sheets once we have them all the way done. So we'll throw them in with the pre-gens. If somebody says, hey, I want to play one of these pre-gens, or I want to play this character that Matt made or the one that Sarah made, we'll have them online.
That's a great idea. I love it. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And we will see you next time in our next video.
Thanks for watching.